Right, y'all. Yes, I have just posted a video over on Michelle After Dark. Just checking my comments. And I had to run with this one. I had to go and check this out, because if this is true, this is the answer to what happened to Sebastian Rogers. Both, Katie and Chris, have military backgrounds. There are blankets that make you 100% invisible. Just saying. So, we now have Katie and Chris Proudfoot skulking about the neighbourhood in the night, wearing cloaks of invisibility. Well, I think this person's been watching too many spy movies. However, I did have to go and check it out. This was the first hit on Google. Invisibility cloaks are not just possible, but are becoming reality. Cool. All right. Long a staple of science fiction and fantasy, the ability to become invisible would be a revolutionary technological development. By bending light of all wavelengths around an object, irrespective of its shape, both metal lenses and metamaterials offer the potential to effectively cloak any object. Recent research has demonstrated that combining the two nanotechnology devices may in fact pave the way to the first working universal invisibility cloak. So we've got research that's paving the way, but is it, can you buy it? Can you go into, like, I don't know, Peacocks, or I don't know what shops sell clothes. Can you look on Amazon and buy an invisibility cloak? This is from 2 years ago now, so maybe it's possible. Maybe the secret military technology that only Chris and Katie Proudfoot had. They were hiding this all along. For as long as human beings have been writing about fantasy, myth and science fiction, the dream of invisibility has always been a top priority. While Star Trek brought the idea of a cloaking device into the popular consciousness, and Harry Potter brought with it the widespread idea of an actual invisibility cloak, there haven't been many useful applications of invisibility-based technology on a large scale. Imagine you could just walk into anywhere with your cloak of invisibility. Wouldn't that be fantastic? Oh, imagine the snooping you could do. Oh, I want this. I want this. In fact, the closest we've come to achieving actual invisibility has been through the development of stealth technology, which only bestows effective invisibility at far longer light waves than human eyes can perceive. Oh, it's not looking good. The invisibility to radar, which is a microwave to radio wavelength electromagnetic radiation, might have been the first step, but recent developments in metamaterials have extended this even further, bending light around an object and rendering it truly undetectable to radar, not the naked eye. Perhaps the critical advance that could finally bring an invisibility cloak to reality occurred in 2018 in a novel material called a broadband achromatic metal lens. For the first time, it rendered an object undetectable across the entire visible light spectrum. The fusion of this technology with metamaterial cloaking, another recent nanotechnology advance, could finally enable the first visible light cloaking device. Here's the story. Look! 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 You could get a cloak of invisibility. Under normal circumstances, when you bombard any material with light of any light wave, the typical behaviour is either absorption or reflection. If the light is absorbed, then any background light and signals will be obscured, alerting you to its presence. In other words, the object won't be transparent. If the light is reflected, any signal you send out will be bounced back to you, illuminating the object and allowing you to observe it directly. Again, the object won't be transparent. The only way to achieve actual transparency would be if the light coming from behind the object could somehow still arrive with the same trajectory in front of the object, as though the light were transmitting directly through the object. The way a true cloaking device would work then, to hide a material that wasn't intrinsically transparent, would be to divert the light round an object from all directions. This way, any observer looking from any location and orientation would simply see the background signals, as though the cloaked object weren't there at all. Imagine that if you're just walking down the street thinking that you were on your own and then you just kept bumping into stuff. And it's all these people walking along in cloaks of invisibility. Because they'd still have mass, wouldn't they? You couldn't pass through them. That would be very confusing. A special multi-layer coating of a substance known as a metamaterial has been developed over the past 2 decades, enabling electromagnetic radiation of certain specific wavelengths to pass freely around an object. This is different from transparency, where light transmits through a material. The structure of a metamaterial guides light around an object, sending it off unperturbed in the same direction that it came in, so it bends. It bends around, it doesn't go through, it bends around. Starting in 2006, the science of transformation optics allowed us to map an electromagnetic field onto a twistable space-like grid. When the grid gets distorted, so does the field, and in the right configuration, an interior object can be completely hidden. By bending and then unbending light by the proper amount, objects can be cloaked to a particular wavelength of light. As of 2016, a 7-layer metamaterial cloak has extended the range from the infrared all the way through the radio portions of the spectrum, an enormous set of wavelength coverage. But that still doesn't extend into the optical, so what can be seen, or in this case not seen, by our eyes. A related nanotechnology to metamaterials comes in the form of the field of metal lenses. Lenses are well known for being transparent and for changing the angle at which background rays of light emerge. Converging and diverging lenses are the most common forms of lens and are frequently used to correct human vision in the form of eyeglasses. Most normal materials that you can create a lens out of has the same dispersive property as a prism. When you pass a light through it, light slows down. But in any lens, there's an unfortunate property that light of different wavelengths slows down by different amounts, which is why you get a rainbow effect when light passes through a medium, as red light travels at a different speed than blue light. Coatings can be applied to carefully shaped lenses to minimise this chromatic aberration effect, but it's always present in some amount. Modern cameras use multiple lenses to eliminate chromatic aberration as much as possible, but it's heavy, bulky, expensive, and still not 100% successful. That's where the idea of a metal lens can offer substantial improvement over traditional lenses, even at visible light wavelengths. A metal lens ideally would shape the wavefronts of incoming light waves regardless of wavelength, allowing that light to be focused down to a single point on even the smallest of scales. A metal lens has numerous attractive properties, including that they can be very thin, on the order of a single wavelength of light. They're easy to fabricate, and they can focus light of a variety of wavelengths all onto the same point. The critical 2018 breakthrough, which was published in Nature Nanotechnology, is through the application of titanium-based nanofins. Based on the wavelength of the incident light, these nanofins will guide the light through a different part of the material, allowing it to bend by exactly the proper necessary amount to have it wind up where we need to be. Immediately, this allows for the development of a cheaper, lighter, more effective lens, as one of the paper's authors, Wai-Ting Chen, explains. By combining 2 nanofins into one element, we can tune the speed of light in the nanostructured material to ensure that all wavelengths in the visible are focused in the same spot using a single metal lens. This dramatically reduces thickness and design complexity compared to composite standard achromatic lenses. While the earliest marketable applications of these metal lenses should soon include cameras, VR devices, microscopes and other medicinal and augmentative technologies, a longer-term fusion of the metal lens lens stroke nano-thin concept with metamaterials could be exactly the holy grail of technological combinations that a real-life cloaking device would require. Some impressive graphs there for our commenter to study. The biggest challenge facing the construction of a real light invisibility cloak has been the incorporation of a large variety of wavelengths, as the cloak's material must vary from point to bend and then unbend the light by proper amounts. While metamaterials have managed an impressive range of coverage, it's thus far excluded visible light, but the addition of a metal lens layer to metamaterials might finally overcome this obstacle. Based on the materials discovered so far, we haven't yet managed to penetrate the visible light portion of the spectrum with a cloak. Oh no, but this was 2 years ago. You know, Katie and Chris Proudfoot might have the state-of-the-art invisibility cloak. We don't know. This new advance in metal lenses, however, seems to indicate that if you can do it for a single narrow wavelength, you can apply this nano-thin technology to extend the wavelength covered tremendously. This first application to achromatic lenses covered nearly the full visible light spectrum, from 470 to 670 nm, whereas human vision extends from 400 to 700 nm. The successful fusion of this metal lens advance with concurrent advance in metamaterials would make visible light cloaking device a reality. Just a few years ago, it was speculated that a real-life invisibility cloak could only be applied to a very narrow set of wavelengths for a few specific configurations. It was thought inconceivable that large macroscopic objects could be cloaked to a huge variety of wavelengths. Today, an advance in metal lenses by guiding light of various wavelengths to the proper location to get the distortion-free outcome we so keenly desire might be just the discovery we need to herald the arrival of a true cloaking device. As Star Trek first envisioned it, it took centuries for cloaking technology to be perfected. Here on Earth, it may require a mere decade or two. If this latest metal lens advance can be rapidly applied to metamaterial cloaks, an optical 3D cloaking device may finally become a reality in humanity's very near future. Well, did you know that Chris and Katie Proudfoot were the first people, because they were in the military, they were given invisibility cloaks? Yeah, all right then. Where do I sign up? I want one.